Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I want to talk about the series where I'm going to bring back the foundation that is called Back to My Roots, and that is back to sharing the foundational practices of magic and witchcraft. And I know that this is something that I've said I'm not going to do anymore, but I am finding, I went through my little temper tantrum, and because you as a creator, sometimes you get tired of doing the same thing, or you want to expand. But I'm finding that in my community that I have created, the Magic Alchemy Circle, I'm finding that these are things that the more advanced things that I can share over there, but there is this call for sharing the basics in magic. And it is because, right, there's a new witch stepping into their witchiness all the time. So it's always going to be someone out there that wants to learn the beginner basics. So I decided that I'm going to go back to my roots. And also I will be sharing the magic as a whole, right? A holistic approach to magic. And what I mean by that is drawing in on how we work with botanicals medicinally, right? And I teach that the way that you can understand how to work with botanicals in your magic is to understand their properties medicinally, right? Understand how they work in nature. What is their role in nature? So this is how you choose what botanicals you want to work with. Because when you understand how they work medicinally, this is the way that I learned. I took a herbal course and got all the books to learn how they work medicinally. This is how I started. So I want to go back to my roots, right? I started to understand them, how they work with our bodies. So when I got into magic, I understood how to work with the botanical a bit better. I didn't need to read a book to tell me what botanical goes with what, because I understood the plant on its its medicinal level, and how it worked in nature and how it worked in my body. So when I want to work with protection, right, I knew my go-to was not just protection but cleansing. My go-to was wormwood, right, because wormwood medicinally, it fights the parasites, right? So that was my go-to, right? Because I'm like, oh, I know what this does in my body. I'm going to tie this all in as a whole. So when you hear me talk about a plant and what magic I use the plant for, I'm also going to add in the medicinal. I've done this over on Patreon. And I'm no longer on Patreon. For those who aren't aware, I'm no longer on Patreon. You'll find me on Patreon, but it's just being held there for people that are on Patreon and want to find me. But I am over on a school platform under Magic Alchemy Circle. I have a couple of circles over there, but you can find me if you want to have anything to do with more going in depth more with magic and not just the foundational basics. You can find me over there. So I'm going back to my roots. That is what I mean. Back to my roots, sharing and sharing what I did and what I learned in the beginning. For those who are newer, this is ongoing, right? There's always someone new. So I want to go back to basics. And even in that, right, even if you are someone that has been more experienced, there are still things, right? There's this candle magic that maybe I do, and you're like, oh, that's a different technique. I'm going to try that in my magic, right? So there's something for everyone. So in this video, you're going to hear about the types of candles that I use and why I use them, and some awareness that will help you be able to choose the candle that you need for the magic that you will do. Before we get into how to choose the right candle, I want to also note that your selection also depends on the type of wax. Different waxes carry and burn energy differently. So, as you go through this breakdown, keep in mind that you may need to adjust your choice based on the wax type that might work best for what it is that you are doing. Hello everyone. So in this series of getting back to the roots of magic, I'm going to be sharing with you how I choose the candles that I would use in spells, in my magic in general. And this is based on exploring my experience and diving in and seeing what works best for me. So I have here the main candles that I use overall, some more than others, but I'm going to be going over a couple of things that I find that's foundational to understanding how to choose the candles. So I'm going to start with, the smallest candle on up. But I would like to note that there are other candles that I use that are more sympathetic magic. So, for example, that would be the skull candle. And I would use a skull candle when I want to work on the mind. So, right, sympathetic magic. And there are other candles like figure candles where it's a male figure or a female figure. That you would typically use in like love magic, other things, but you see those generally used in love magic. So there are other types of candles that you can use, but I want to talk about, when you are someone that works on magic, creating spells, quite often you can find it's expensive to get those different types of candles. So it is really, in my opinion, better to have your foundational candles that you work with. And then I'll talk a little bit about colors later in the video, but I want to go over these candles right here. So you'll see my little lineup I have here. First, we're going to start with the tea light candle, and with that I want to say one of the foundational things to know to help you choose is the burn time of the candle. So each candle, right, obviously depending on how much wax, right, a tea light candle has very small amount of wax, and also the type of wax will determine the burn time of the candle. So that is the first thing that you want to understand. And typically that will come whenever you purchase the candle. Typically that will come on the box. It'll tell you the type of wax and give you the burn time. And if you go to a Botanica, most often they will not have that information. But you could Google it and ask the general question of what is the burn time of this wax in the size of the candle that you have. But overall, you'll get a sense of, after working with the candles over time, what burn time each candle has, depending on the wax and the size, and if it's in glass container. And also you want to take into consideration the temperature of where it will be burning, because that also plays into the burn time. And if it's a humid space, that candle may burn down quicker. If it's a cooler space, it may burn down slower. So understanding, knowing, having the knowledge of the burn time is the first key to knowing what candle you'll choose for your magic. And I'll explain a bit further about that. But knowing the burn time of each candle, that's where you want to begin, right? So we have our tea light candle. And when we think about the burn time, the tea light candle is one of the fastest burn times, right? Because it's not that much wax. And you would choose several reasons that I choose a tea light candle, right? Quick workings. And when you think about quick workings, for me at least, it's just a quick affirmation that you want to set for the day. Or maybe sometimes I use it for devotional work, where I know that I'm going to be saying this thing on my altar every day, and I want to light a candle. This is less expensive, right? So I want to use a tea light candle, and I know it is for that moment. It'll burn down quickly, and I'll speak that affirmation or intention for the day. So more on a devotional note, but you use these when there's like quick workings. It's not this big elaborate working, and they can also be used for supporting candles. So I've used them. I believe I share videos on here. I've used them for the directions, the north, south, east, and west. So I would have, right, the main candles. They say it's this main candle, and I would use 4 tea light candles, each to represent the directions, because I want to tap into the magic and call forth the magic in each of the directions of the world when I am whatever it is that I'm doing. So I've used these for supporting candles, but overall, these are my go-to. Like when it's something quick, I'm going to pull a tea light candle out. It is just for that moment that I know I'm going to sit there and do that affirmation for the day, or set that intention for the day, or either venerate a spirit or deity. In that moment, I'll pull out this candle if they don't have like their own main candle. But that's how I would use the tea light candle. I don't typically, other than it being a supporting candle, I don't typically use tea light candles in spells, because I feel like spells need something that holds weight and holds the intention, right? Because you're putting your intention into that candle, and the fire is igniting it into the ethers, right? So I don't typically use tea light candle for spell work, although you can, right? Because sometimes you can use a big candle thinking that because it's big, it's really going to do the work. But essentially, it's more not really the candle doing the work. The candle is carrying the magic. But if you are right in this emotion, right, you are pissed off about something and you are charged and your intention is going into it, a tea light candle might work, right? So you're right, because it's you're putting the magic more behind it with your intention and your emotion, and right, typically how you structure your magic. So overall, I use these for smaller things. So now we move on to the chime candle, and the chime candle, right, is shaped like a taper candle, but it's a chime candle, right, because it's a smaller candle. This might be like 2¼ inch or almost 3 inches. So these I don't typically use for spell working either. These are more quick, intentional settings, more if it's something for me, right? And not, something that, again, it's spell working. I would use these more for just setting, small intentions, because in my mind, I equate, right? You can have a different perception, but whatever perception you have, right, you want to work with that, because this is how you don't want anything to conflict with you setting that intention. So in my mind, it is not a larger enough candle to do the magic that a larger working. So these are just used for intentional settings, right? And also for supporting candles as well. So if I don't feel like I want to use the tea light candles and I'm doing like this working that I really need to like return back to sender, and I want to return it to north, south, east, and west, I will use 4 of these, and depending if I have the corresponding colors, usually it's just I'm using either all white or all black. And I'll use these for supporting candles as well. 4 of these candles, right, for the directions. Or it could be a supporting candle, adding to, however you choose to use it, it can be a supporting candle, right? So you have your main candle and you need this to help it do something. But overall, for me, I use it for quick setting of intentions for myself, or for a supporting candle. So the one that I use the most is this Coach candle here. This is my go-to. It's perfect size for me. And I use it in most of my spell workings. And one of those reasons, a couple of reasons, one is bigger, right? And also the real estate of the candle, of the wax, is, you know, big enough for me to write my intentions, and it's not too big that because sometimes you want to sit with your working, right? You want to sit with it and help that magic go out. And you don't want it to be too large, because it depends on the working. But in most cases, when I'm doing spell working, I don't want it to be too large, because I need that magic to be activated and set out in motion, right? So this is perfect size. It can be dressed with enough botanicals, right, and oils, and you can carve on it. So this is my go-to for spell workings. And the next one, before I go to the ones in the glass, is the taper candle. I don't really use in spell working. Every now and then I'll do a spell working. I remember I did like one last year where I used these, and for me it's more about the general effect and look of a magic. Sometimes when I need that, it helps me charge me more, so I'll use the taper candle and set them in like a pretty holder that holds the taper candles. But I generally do not use the taper candles. If I use them, it is more devotional, right, to a deity or spirit. So that's just a taper candle, right? You can also, I guess, if you want to, I don't, right, if you have a taper candle, you could use it for spell working, right? Because it's, when you think about this, and the reason why I use this, this is the next up, right? So you can still write on this. So you can use these for spell working, but for me, I generally do not use a taper candle. With this, you want to explore what works best for you, right? So for me, taper candles do not do it. Coach candles do it for spell working. So next we have our smaller candle in glass. I don't typically use these, but what I would use them for, and why I actually have one on hand, is because I purchased these candles because I am working on creating these for, they're part of my working with the planets. And this is for Venus, but I have these to demonstrate why and how I would use them. Again, depending on the wax and the temperature of the room. But I would use these for something that, right, you really, for one, the main reason why I would use candle and glass is because you can like put marker right on it. And also the time that it burns is a bit longer. So say you want to do a 3-day working and you want to light this each day. That is the main reason I would use this candle. If I want to apply my intention and my magic to something over the course of 3 days, because it has a lot of moving parts to the magic that needs to be dealt with, right? So I would use this 3-day candle. It's for bigger magic. Again, this is just me saying this. This is my experience, and this is how I work with the candles. So then we have, last but not least, we have our 7-day candle. Now, originally when I first started working with candles, I understood these candles as the novenas, where you go to a botanica and you see this size candle, and you'll see a picture of a saint, a spirit or deity on that candle, and it's more like a devotional candle to venerate that spirit or deity. And you'll see the writing, or maybe a prayer, or maybe like an incantation to that spirit. Alternatively, you have them to create your own, right? So what I did in the beginning was I would get the 7-day candle, and I would get a picture or draw something that represents the spirit I was working with, and that would be their devotional candle. And I would light that candle for a certain amount of time each day. Then when it burns out, I went and got another candle to do the same thing. So over the years, I've kind of grew from that. What I would use the 7-day candle for now is really a larger working. So I have one that I do every so often, usually about once a year, sometimes twice a year. I'll do a self confidence working, and it's generally toward business or career. And I would use an orange 7-day candle, and I would have that candle, light that candle each day. And depending on the amount of time that you burn that candle that day for each day, the candle can last way longer than 7 days. I've done that where the candle has lasted 10 days and sometimes longer, right? Because it depends on how long you burn that candle. But this I would use for larger things that you want to apply, right, more things to. So when something has a lot of moving parts, because you have to think about magic, what you are, if someone else is involved, if you have to move them out of the way, in order to move them out of the way, something else has to happen, right? So when there's a lot of moving parts, I use the larger 7-day candle. Now, I want to talk a bit about color. The second foundational rule when you want to work with candles is knowing the correspondence of the colors, right? Knowing what color aligns with what. Short and sweet, right? However, I would like to add that in my experience, we each align with colors differently. And that could simply be because you've had an experience, and in that a negative experience, the color blue was associated. So maybe the blue, you have some trauma around blue, and if a working has a correspondence that align with the color blue, and you go to use that blue candle, when you are casting that magic, you're like looking at the blue. So it's affecting your energy, and your energy is going to affect that magic. I know it sounds crazy, but it's funny enough, the color blue is for healing. So before you work with the color blue, maybe you want to get a little healing around that color. You really have to think about that. A lot of people I know don't think about they can have some adverse feeling to certain colors, and that will go into your magic, right? So you want to be truly aligned with what it is that you are working with, and that also includes the colors of the candles. A lot of people say that, oh, this is the color for that deity. Maybe not for you, right? So you have to get your hands dirty, you'll hear me say this a lot throughout this series, right? Get your hands dirty, dive in. The only way you will know what works for you is if you study it, practice it, put it in motion, set it in motion, do it, not just read about it, right? So a lot of times you'll have an understanding of, oh, this is the correspondence because this is what everyone says. This is the color that corresponds with the work I want to do. There's nuances, in everything, right? So it's because your situation is unique, right? Your situation is not the same as someone else's who wrote the list of correspondences. So this is how I choose my candles, but above all, just remember it's not about your intention. It is about what works for you, and understanding the foundational awareness of how, the candles work. And the burn time is the biggest one. In the beginning, I didn't focus on that. I just focused on what people said works for what. So if you know the burn time of the candles, and if your magic is something that you feel like this is something that is a bigger working, and you think about it has a lot of moving parts, you want to go with a larger candle. But if you only have tea light candles, you want to use more than one tea light candle, right? If it's a large working, and light a tea light candle each day for 3 days maybe. So there's ways that you could work around not having a larger candle and you feel like you really need one. So if you want to do a 7-day self-confidence magic working, you can use maybe 7 tea light candles, right? Light one each day. And also with the colors, I want to say this took me a while to realize and do. Ultimately, what I make sure I have in my home are white and black candles. If I only have, there's been plenty of times where I've only had white candles and I wanted to do this banishing or protection work. I have shungite powder, which is black. Shungite powder is banishing and cleansing. It has those metaphysical properties. So I would take the white candles that I have in my home at the time, right? No black candles available. I would dress this white candle with a black shungite powder. So the reason why I've decided to make sure that the candles that I do have always on hand is either white or black, or sometimes just one of those, is because it gets expensive. If you're someone that is constantly, like, you're a practitioner that works magic all the time, it gets expensive and you want to be smart, right? So when you are, because I get that question quite a bit about the colors. What color do I use? I don't have that color, right? Work it. I keep glitter. Glitter is another way that I bring in the corresponding color into the magic if I only have a white or a black candle. So I keep glitter. I keep my shungite powder. Those things is less expensive, right? To just have like a bunch of those and just keep getting like your white or black candles, or just only get white candles and then dress them with the corresponding colors. That is the way that I work around not having it be so expensive to get candles. So that's just a tip for me and what I found, right? So if you're worried about colors, use a white candle and bring in the color by the way you dress the candle. And I find that shungite powder is excellent. I purchased it. I'll put it in the description if I can find where. I don't know. It was years ago. I've had this for a long time, and it's it's like a 4-ounce pouch, but it is very good if you want to. It's black. So if you only have white candles and you're doing some banishing, it's good to bring in another element of banishing. But I use that to dress my candles also. So as a color correspondence, and also as, with its properties. But that's just a tip from me and how I use it in my practice. So that is overall generally how you choose the candles that you're going to use in your magic. If you have any questions, let me know. Drop them in the comments. I will be happy to answer, or anyone else can answer, right? If you put it into the comments of this video. So until the next video, I love you all, and into the shadows.